right. Well, we'll get started right away. Welcome, everyone. This is our first episode of the new Innovator series, and the title today is Agentic AI, the Next Frontier. Before we begin, let me do a little bit of housekeeping. Just as a reminder, the next symposium will be on May 20th, 2025, and we will also have a pre-event for VIPs on May 19, 2025. Also, I just want to bring your attention to our online schedule. On Tuesday, February 25th, I'll be joined by Irving Vladowski-Berger for our second open Q&A. And then on Tuesday, March 4th, we'll have a second Innovator-only series with George Corbin. But for today, the format is we're going to have a 30-minute presentation, approximately, followed by 30 minutes of Q&A. The Q&A will follow Chatham House rules, which means that you can take information away from this session and talk about it, but you may not attribute that information to anybody in the meeting. So basically, what's said in Vegas stays in Vegas. Now, normally, we're not going to record the Innovator series, but for Mike's talk, we will. And so we will start Chatham House rules during the Q&A, and at that time, I'll turn off the recording. So please hold your questions to when Mike is done, and then to ask a question, go down to reactions at the bottom of your screen, and you can raise your virtual hand. I'm sure you all know how to do it at this point. So we'll recognize you in order. So today we have Mike Grandinetti, who is one of our organizing team members, and also he teaches executive education courses on AI at Harvard, Carnegie Mellon, Cornell, Oxford, and Babson in the US, Europe, Asia, the Middle East, and LATAM, Latin American countries. And he sits on several technology advisory boards on public companies. So without any further ado, welcome, Mike, and please take it away.
Alan, thank you so much, and good morning, I think, to most of you. I think we're all, at least in the U.S. time zone, from what I've seen. It's a pleasure to be here with you to talk about one of my favorite topics, Agentic AI, and this really is the new frontier. And I'm going to make that case over the next 30 or 35 minutes before we move into Q&A. And so, as the great sci-fi author William Gibson said, the future has already arrived. It's just not evenly distributed yet. And for those of you in the CIO community, you are the kind of people that tend to step into the future ahead of the mainstream. And so if you had asked me in October, is this agentic AI revolution going to happen anytime soon, I would have dismissed it as hype. But the bottom line is there has been a Cambrian explosion of innovations, of improvements in models, reasoning models. And as a result of that, not only are the agents coming, the agents are already here. And I will share a number of case studies with you that I think will convey to you that forward-looking companies have used agentic workflows, to improve their business processes and are already seeing significant benefits. So the agents are on the ground, and it's up to us now to figure out how to work with them. Okay. I'm a very big believer in getting right to the punchline. So let me tell you what I think the key takeaways should be. Let's just look at some numbers first. Over 80% of enterprises expect to be using AI agents within 3 years, according to Capgemini. And then from a very recent KPMG quarterly pulse survey, over half of all enterprises today are exploring the use of agents. Well over a third have already put them into pilot mode, and at least 12% have deployed them for use within their organizations. Now, let's draw a distinction, right? We've been hearing so much about these frontier large language models. These models have been designed to perform a single task. AI agents are all about executing complex workflows autonomously. Now, experts are predicting, and I think we're already starting to see this in certain corporations, that Agentic AI does in fact have the potential to transform digital work. And we're already hearing about the rise of the synthetic workforce. And what that means is not only are we going to have real people working for us, very soon we're going to have agents working on our behalf, and they will be part of our extended team. Now, experts are also predicting, and we're already starting to see this, that agentic AI has the potential to disrupt SaaS business models and pricing. And we're starting to see some of the early companies that are getting traction in the agentic space having a very different pricing model, paying for labor, paying for outcomes, not for seats. Many different high impact use cases are in use today across all kinds of industries. And there is just an abundance of different options available for CIOs and those who are looking to begin to put agentic AI to work within their respective organizations. Now, I happen to have the opportunity to spend time in Davos just a couple of weeks ago, specifically at the MIT AI Day, also known as the Imagination and Action Day. And we heard from Nobel laureates like Demis Hassabis, the founder of Google DeepMind, Turing Award winners like Yoshua Bengio and Jan LeCun, Lemelson Award winners like Ramesh Raskar from MIT. And there's no question that a very significant topic of discussion across the entire day was agentic AI. What's interesting is DeepSeek was first mentioned at this conference by Andrew Yang, the founder of Scale AI, but it didn't really seem to find its way into the broader world until the Wall Street Journal picked up on those comments. And of course, we all know the results on Wall Street of the DeepSeek phenomena. And so, as CIOs, for those of you who are mid-career or later career, you have always been, on a journey to the future. And what's coincidental is the MIT CIO Symposium really began that journey with you in the 2003-2004 timeframe when the organization was first created. And so you have lived through a multitude of different eras. Of course, as we moved into the digital age, the velocity of change continued to expand. And then at the far right of this graphic, we are now decisively in the age of AI, and we are very rapidly progressing to agentic AI. And if you blinked, you might have missed it. And so the cognitive revolution was really the first step in sort of this mainstream usage of AI. And I don't know about you, but every morning I wake up doing my best to keep up with what's going on in this space. I don't know how many podcasts and blogs I listen to, and it's like drinking from a fire hose. And of course, those of you who are running IT organizations don't have time to be able to keep up with this stuff at the pace that is required today. So in the early days of the generative AI cognitive revolution, we saw that this general purpose technology platform, whether it be OpenAI or Claude or Gemini, these are essentially Swiss Army knives on steroids. They just have an extraordinary number of tools that you can use to support you in a wide range of different use cases. And so McKinsey was kind enough fairly early on to create a heat map. And of course, in this heat map along the vertical axis, we see a number of industries. And across the horizontal, we see all of the different functions within a specific organization. And so this was really an opportunity to say, where do we think the most high ROI, high impact use cases are going to happen? And not surprisingly, it's really played out exactly as McKinsey had templated it. Now, what's really interesting is I was at the MIT Sloan CFO conference or summit in November. And I remember asking specifically the panelists that was being moderated by McKinsey, and there were 4 very prominent CFOs on the panel. And I said, it's interesting to see that the finance function is definitely lagging when it comes to the adoption of generative AI. And to a person, the message was, it's not that we don't believe in generative AI, but we really want to invest, with the highest return, with the biggest bang for the buck. So they were looking at the four sort of universal use cases: customer facing, which is marketing, sales, and customer operations and support, and of course, software engineering. So we're seeing that play out universally. Google took some time to look at all of its AI customers, and it peered into its cloud business and said, we've been able to sort of factor all of the use cases into these 6 different elements. And they identified about 321 Gen AI use cases that were being used in the enterprise that were hosted within Google Cloud. Obviously, there's going to be many more. This is one organization, one aperture at one point in time. Now, we've seen some amazing tools that have been made available to us. Notebook LM, many consider to be maybe the most interesting tool that was launched last year. This is the one that famously allows you to summarize up to 50 different sources of information, create a notebook. I have literally now many, many hundreds of notebooks, and then it turns all of that information into a very compelling podcast, literally within minutes. Incredible way to learn. And of course, Perplexity is a tool that I imagine all of you are using on a regular basis. They're really redefining what search is all about. Okay. And not surprisingly, as we look at a lot of the organizations, all of these are well-known brands. They're working with all of the usual suspects, the hyperscalers and the frontier model creators. The only name some might not recognize is Cohere, which is somebody that Cisco and McKinsey are working with. They are not selling to consumers. So the Cohere brand is not known, but it's a highly respected large language model that is being targeted specifically at the enterprise. Okay. And man, have things improved. And so we've rapidly gone from these fast, instinctive responses, system 1, think of ChatGPT 4.0, to these new, very deliberate reasoning models. And what's amazing is that up until 2 weeks ago, all reasoning models, which are very compute intensive, required a subscription. And then a company known as DeepSeek put out a very capable reasoning model, DeepSeek R1, which was a shot across the bow of all of the major US AI players. And instantly, we started to see all of them respond in kind. So as of a few days ago, OpenAI has put out its OpenAI o3 mini reasoning model. Microsoft is leaning on an earlier version of OpenAI, their o1 model, which is only about 2 months old now. And Google Gemini has a flash thinking model. So now these models are far more competent. Now, a year ago, people said, you know what? Generative AI is never going to be good at math. Well, never say never. Because if you look at the o1 model and you look at how it's performed in this American Invitational Mathematics examination, it's answering questions with 83% accuracy. Codeforce, which is probably the most respected coding competition in the world, we're seeing an 80, o1 is in the 89th percentile, a dramatic improvement over what GPT-4 was with 11. And then this PhD level, what we call the Google Proof Q&A benchmark, PhD level science questions, we're at 78% already. And then o3 came out. And o3, again, is quite new. And it's only been 2 months since o1 was launched. So they're really moving at light speed. And what we saw in this Codeforces competition was that o3 is able to achieve a score of 2727. The highest score achievable is 3,000, which is a legendary grandmaster. Only 14 people in the world have achieved that. OpenAI has only 1 employee with a score of 3,000. Okay. And so OpenAI is now delivering coding capability that is superior to all but 177 of the world's top ranked programmers. Okay. This has significant implications for this Cambrian explosion and all of these AI development tools that we're seeing. Okay. Now, the other piece of change that's very significant is we've seen pricing collapse. And this is following a similar model that we have seen time and again. from the beginning of sort of the client server revolution that disrupted the mainframe business. Okay. If you look at the cost of 1 million tokens, that's both input and output, which is a very good business benchmark for what is the cost of AI intelligence. The cost of 1 million tokens dropped by 240x from $180 to 75 cents in 18 months. Now let's compare that to another scaling law, Moore's law. People were very impressed that the cost of computing power fell 50% or by half in 18 months. And now we're seeing 240x in 18 months. And so when O3 was released, the cost of accessing the API is 63% lower than the cost of accessing the API with the O1 model from just 2 months ago. So there is no question that DeepSeek elicited an incredibly intense response from OpenAI because they're only now 2x the cost of using the API with R1, okay? And so we're seeing what is called Jevons paradox. You've probably heard this phrase mentioned a lot recently in the news if you're paying attention to what's happening in the world of compute. And Jevons paradox basically says when the cost decreases by half, the demand increases by far more than half. So let's look at OpenAI from its big drop in November of 23. It's gone from 100 million users to 300. And what's amazing is it's added 50 million new users in just 2 months. I'm seeing this personally in my classes. I'm seeing in my exec ed classes a far higher level of familiarity and usage of Gen AI than I was in the past. And they've also seen a significant tripling of their paid subscribers to 15% of their total user base. They have also got an amazing retention rate of about 71%. So people are quite satisfied, okay? But we are now moving into this new frontier. We're going from assistive to agentic AI, okay? And this really is the future of AI, and there's no question in my mind that this is the case. Let me just give you a preview of what's possible. You obviously recognize JFK on the left and younger Henry Kissinger on the right. This is a very intense board game. It's called diplomacy, and it's been played by statesmen and diplomats forever. Just to set the context, it's set in 1901. It requires a number of players that represent all of the great powers of that era. And the objective is to capture and control the majority of supply centers, which represent centers of government, industry, commerce, etc. There was no luck involved, no dice, no cards. And it is really renowned for its intense gameplay. It tests friendships because of its focus on negotiation, deception, and strategic alliances. And so Meta created a project called Cicero, named after the great Roman statesman and scholar and philosopher. And what the outcomes have been is nothing short of extraordinary. Cicero entered into this game, and nobody in the game could figure out that Cicero was a bot. Cicero interacted with all of the people that were playing this very serious game in a way that no one ever guessed it was a bot. In an 8-game tournament with 21 players, Cicero placed first. Across all 40 games, its score was 2x all of the opponents, 82 opponents, doubling their average score, okay? It was able to actually understand other players' motivations and perspectives. And it was really one of the most impressive aspects in that it was able to interact naturally with people. So it actually exchanged double the number of messages compared to human players that it beat. So this is just an example of how so generative AI, the promise is quite remarkable. And then we see more simplistic things. This was published by Wharton professor Ethan Mollick. This was a recently peer-reviewed paper just showing that when you add agents to fact-check output of a model, 3 agents can reduce hallucinations by 96% across 310 test cases, okay? So the bottom line is This is a very adaptive system. And so how do these systems work? We provide instructions to an agent using natural language prompts, just like we would to an employee. The agent will break down that prompt into a series of tasks, and it will assign those subtasks to specialized sub-agents, and then will execute those tasks using relevant tools and data. So it's able to interact with its environment. The agent will seek user feedback, and it will refine its output iteratively to continue to improve its accuracy and its relevance. And it will take whatever actions are necessary in either the digital or physical world to complete the request of the user. And so if we look at this comparison between typical language models and AI agents, right, the use case scope goes from automating a single task to automating an entire workflow or process. These language models are not capable of planning or orchestrating workflows, where, of course, AI agents are. Language models do not have the ability to retain memory, and they have very limited fine-tuning capabilities, where agents can use both short-term and long-term memory and learn from previous user interactions, and they can provide personalized responses. And memory can be shared across agents in a system. Models are not designed to integrate with external tools or systems, where with agents, they are able to access through APIs and tools, all kinds of tools, data extractors, image selectors, search APIs, and of course, these reasoning models, okay? And so what we think we're going to see fairly soon, and some organizations have already begun to deploy, according to McKinsey, is the rise and integration of the synthetic workforce. So what does that look like? So here is an image from McKinsey, right? And this is an illustration of how an agent might execute a workflow. And so on the top half of the diagram on the right, we have an external system where the agent is interacting with a database and other systems, either organizational or even external data outside the firewall to complete the task. And you have a manager agent that has been instructed by a human being on a task that it wants it to get done. And that manager agent is then managing these sub-agents. One is an analyst, one is a checker, one is a planner, these specialist agents. And so the agent system interprets the prompt, builds a work plan. The manager sends those subtasks to each of the specialist agents. The agents go off and do what they're supposed to do. They come back, they share the draft with the user. And then so human feedback, the user then provides feedback, and it iterates until they accomplish. Here's just one very simple but very common use case, right? The creation of a credit risk memo. In current course and speed, an analyst typically spends 20 plus hours writing this memo. Yet generative AI is able to cut the time spent on creating these credit risk memos by 20 to 60% using agentic AI, theoretically delivering a highly accurate memo at the end of the first iteration of the task, not going through multiple iterations, okay? And so we're starting to see the world flip on its head. We're moving away from a world of software as a service to service as software. And so the cloud transition was to create SaaS, and now agentic reasoning is creating service as a software. And if we look at a couple of the leading players, Klarna, a very successful company in the buy now, pay later space that's about to go public in the US as a $20 billion valuation, has announced publicly that it has shut down Salesforce and Workday, and it is creating its own internal tech stack using agentic AI. And this is after already reducing their CS headcount by 50%. And again, there's an incredible amount of insight from Klarna. They are really on the bleeding edge. But Klarna has seen dramatic improvements in financial performance by bringing AI into every element of their business. And even though they've cut customer support headcount by 50%, they've dramatically improved its performance. They've cut resolution time from 11 to 2 minutes, and they've taken about $40 million of expenses out of the customer support operation. Another company that's getting a lot of traction is Atomic Work. And so what we're starting to see is ITSM and ESM applications. So this is one example of an organization, Amex Corp, that has replaced Jira Service Management with an agentic approach to ITSM. This company was recently funded by Khosla and Thrive Capital. So this is a company that is getting a lot of attention recently, right? So what we're seeing is the old guard, a lot of names that we recognize, including two I just mentioned, Jira and ServiceNow. And of course, we're seeing the new guard. And I don't have a lot of time to go into startups today. We can potentially do that another time because there's just so many of them. It would be impossible to cover them. But what we're seeing is the new guard is, again, services as software. So we're seeing these emerging pricing models. So we have the older style, right? Zendesk, as an example, is classic per seat. But now we're starting to see usage-based pricing. Decagon is a very successfully, rapidly emerging customer support company. And 11 Labs, many of you probably know 11 Labs. It's kind of at the forefront of voice AI, right? So they're moving to usage-based pricing. There's also a move toward outcome-based pricing, and Atomic Work is another company. So the economics are starting to change very dramatically. Okay. And so we're starting to see the AI budget is going to shift this year away from chatbots into agents specifically. Some early examples. Some of you may be subscribers to Gemini, and so you may have tried Gemini's deep research tool, right? We are now in an era where we are moving from search to AI search. And this has agents that can go off and literally in a second find 50 different websites that are most relevant to your prompt, come back, let you know what those websites are, and tell you what its research plan is, and then ask you for permission to execute the plan or to modify the plan. Extraordinary advance, okay? I've been using a tool called Storm from Stanford University. This is an open source tool, okay? And it literally is a product that allows you to use multiple agents that collaborate together. Each has a different role, and they go off and they do content retrieval. They look for multiple perspectives. They then do content synthesis, and they provide you with a Wikipedia-style 3 or 4 page report, okay? And so you've got all of these different agents now that are going off on your behalf into the web, right? Into Reddit, into wherever they need to go, into, all kinds of data repositories, and bringing back information to you in a matter of seconds after they've synthesized it. And then we have CoStorm, which takes it to a different level. These are both free to use, by the way. They're both open source. And this now allows for collaborative discourse for people, for teams that are doing research together. Okay, and it creates mind maps and report generation models. All right, so we're starting to see this research. And then recently, an organization called FreeThink, also based at Stanford, created a virtual lab where for people that do not have the resources to hire, scientists, it's able to help you find them using Agentic AI and bring them to your team, okay? And not to be outdone, since DeepSeek was launched, OpenAI has been working overtime. They just put deep research into the market on Sunday. And some of you may know Dharmesh Shah, the founder and CTO of HubSpot. He put a post up on LinkedIn, said that it produced an 11,000 word report with data, citations, tables, and insights. And he said in all of his time in industry, this is probably the most jaw-dropping thing he ever experienced. Now, just to make it clear, this is a research using what we'll call the reasoning model. The prompt led to an 11-minute pause. So deep research spent 11 minutes thinking about Dharmesh's prompt before it came back with an answer. Think how different that is than that real-time response from the old ChatGPT 4. And so people are looking for some amazing use cases. One of the very first avatars, not surprisingly, is in the sales world, specifically what we call sales development. And there's many out there. This one got a lot of notoriety because it came out of Y Combinator. But what you have is an avatar named Ava. And what happens with Ava is you onboard her through Slack. She then works with you to create target personas. She creates different playbooks with different tones of voice. She now has access not to 270, but about 310 million email addresses. And she's able to ghostwrite and send thousands of emails appropriately, so you're not blacklisted, and then can book sales meetings directly into the calendar of your outbound sales force. Now, I've used early versions of Ava, and I've been really impressed with how capable these are. And then coding. Some of you may have heard of Devin. Devin was first introduced in March of last year, so we're coming to the 1-year anniversary. It's now at version 2.0, which was launched just about a week, 1.2, just about a week ago. And this was designed as the world's first fully autonomous AI software engineer. Okay. And so Ethan Mollick was reviewing it and said, it makes a plan, it executes it autonomously, it does research, writes code, and debugs without you needing to watch it. And so this is a space that is going to move very rapidly. Our good friends at Microsoft, probably the most popular code assistant platform by a long shot is GitHub Copilot. It's being used by millions of developers around the world, thousands of organizations. And they recently released the next iteration, which is what they call GitHub Copilot Workspace. Okay, and everything about it is to allow developers to build with AI agents. So it's designed as a multi-agent system where the sub-agents can interact and collaborate to help you achieve larger goals. And some of the key capabilities, and I'm going to wrap up soon, Alan, just to keep us on track here. Autonomous task execution. So agents can now perform a wide range of tasks. You can query documentation, you can retrieve data, you can execute all kinds of different specific actions with minimal input. You're able to bring multiple agents together to handle these complex tasks much more efficiently than a single agent can. It continues to provide AI-assisted coding, which was one of the early benefits of GitHub Copilot 1.0. And it's able to do all kinds of workflow automation so that you can interact with users, fix errors, write code. Okay, and then what you see here is just a very simple stack, because there's probably more innovation happening right now in the agentic AI software development space than anywhere else. And so what you're going to see are in the middle here, replacing engineering workflow AI agents. There's hundreds and hundreds of companies that are participating in this space. But for those in the CIO world where you're developing applications, I would imagine this would be a very robust place for you to start looking for some of your best use cases, okay? And one example of an agentic solution coming off this map is this company called Momentic that has been able to deliver an end-to-end automated software testing tool that gets you 99.2% reliability, well above the industry average of 95%. And a lot of the most advanced software tooling companies are already using it. And the claim is that these end-to-end tests can be completed up to 10 times quicker than traditional methods, okay? And then for those of you who have the challenge of still updating old code, one of the, I think, most underhyped areas is code agents for modernization, where you're able to convert COBOL into Java. And there's a number of solutions out there, including one I was surprised to learn about, which is McKinsey. They have their Black Quantum AI business, and they've got something called Legacy X. So, Alan, with that, let me pause. I could go for hours, but let me pause there and open it up.
All right, Mike, thank you very much. I'm going to stop the recording and then we'll go to the Q&A.